Have a seat. In case you don't know me, I'm Lorena, and I'm thrilled to be here today. Let's get started this morning. Let's go into prayer. Let's take a deep breath together. We open sacred space today by taking that deep breath of oneness, recognizing and honoring that we are all human and we are all divine. We honor the duality of that, and at the same time understand that there is only one. There is only God. As we enter into this sacred time together as a community, we open to all the gifts this experience has to offer. We open our minds to new ideas. We open our arms to each other. And we open our hearts to love. And it is in this place of love that we rest. And so it is. Amen. Okay, we have a song now?
Yeah, we'll sing another song.
Okay.
And then we won't sing for a while.
Okay. Okay, this is the time of our sacred giving. I'm looking for Patricia to make sure I'm on track here. So if you'd like to take out your offering and hold it in your hands, bring it to your heart, remembering an offering can be a financial gift, can be a prayer of love, a prayer of peace. Everything is a gift. And we bless this offering for the greatest abundance for each of us as individuals and for our community sacred space. And we understand that in the giving is the receiving. And so it is. Okay. In the words of Gandhi, your beliefs become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. So today we're talking about the hidden power of belief. Now, it's a power that's always working, so truly it's not hidden. But I like to think of it as a hidden power because until you really understand the magnitude of the power of what you believe, then you're really unable to harness it for good. It I think my kids always have this joke about, the dark side. Come to the dark side, we have cookies, right? And I think about that in the power of our belief is that if we don't understand what we're believing, sometimes it works more towards our dark side. It's working underneath everything and we don't understand why we're getting what we're getting, right? So what is belief? Belief is an acceptance that something is true or that something exists. And Abraham Hicks says, a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. It's just a thought that you keep thinking. And you think it so long that pretty soon it becomes your truth. Now, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but for me, I've watched other people do it and I've watched myself do it. I have a thought based on absolutely nothing real or nothing evidenced, but I have a thought. And then I have that same thought again, and again, and again. And pretty soon, that thought is so strong in me that if you were to ask me, I would just be sure that it was based on something real. Because it's become so real, now it's become this truth. And now I speak it as if it's real. And it came from nowhere. It came out of just one thought. And we all have millions of thoughts. I hope I'm not the only one that has millions of thoughts floating through my mind every day. And they're just thoughts. They don't necessarily have any truth. I don't know what that mechanism is inside of us, but it's just like, well, let's try out this thought. Well, let's try out this thought. And we get to decide if we're going to buy into it or not. Our beliefs affect everything. They affect what we see. they affect what we do, they affect who we are, and they even affect our biology. And today, we're going to use our spiritual teacher is going to be Bruce. Not Bruce Roller, though we know he has lots of spiritual wisdom for us, but Bruce Lipton. And I don't know if anybody is familiar with this book, but The Biology of Belief. And he's a scientist, and he studied cells. And what he found is that our cells work very much like our thoughts. They operate based on, they're controlled by the brain. And our cells buy into whatever our brain tells them. Right, so there's this interesting experiment. Let me find here. That was conducted. So this is fascinating. This shows you truly the power of your belief. So in 2002, Baylor School of Medicine, they did a study. And the lead author of the study was Dr. Bruce Moseley. And he knew, without a doubt, that knee surgery helped his patients. He just knew it. He said, all good surgeons know there is no placebo effect in surgery. And you all know what the placebo effect is, right?
Really?
He was sure. So he embarked on the experiment not to see if there was a placebo effect, but to see which part of his surgery was more effective. That was his initial intent. He wanted to know which part was actually giving the patients relief. So the patients in the study were divided into 3 groups. And whenever I think about studies, I always think, oh, what about that group, right? It's not really ethical, but they do it. So 3 groups. In the first group, Moseley shaved the damaged cartilage in the knee of one of the groups. Okay? For another group, he flushed out the knee joint, removing material thought to be causing the inflammatory effect. Both of those operations constitute standard treatment for arthritis in a knee. Now, has anybody had any procedures for their knee in here? Just curious. Okay. Now, the third group got, quote, fake surgery. And this is what he did. He sedated the patient. He made 3 standard incisions and then talked and acted just as he would have during a real surgery.
They could hear it.
So they could hear it, right. He even splashed salt water to simulate the sound of the knee washing procedure. After 40 minutes, he sewed up the incisions as if he had done the surgery. And then all 3 groups were prescribed the same post-operative care, which included an exercise program. Fascinating. And he was shocked by what he found. The groups who received surgery as expected improved. He knew that they would. But the placebo group improved just as much as the other 2 groups. Isn't that fascinating?
Wow.
They all thought they had surgery, and they got better just like the ones who actually had the surgery. And Moseley's response to that was, my skill as a surgeon had no benefit on these patients. The entire benefit of surgery for osteoarthritis of the knee was the placebo effect. Isn't that fascinating? And the people who were in the placebo effect did not find out until 2 years after that. And one of the guys who was in that group, let's see, Tim Perez was his name. He was walking with a cane before surgery, and when they came back to him 2 years later, he was playing basketball with his grandchildren. And when they told him what part he had played in this experiment, he had a heart. Are you sure? I think your records are wrong. I think I was actually in the other group. And they said, no, we're positive. You didn't actually get surgery. And his response when the Discovery Health Channel interviewed him was, "In this world, anything is possible when you put your mind to it. I know that your mind can work miracles." Because he watched his mind work a miracle and heal something that he thought needed fixed. So it's the power of our belief. What do we believe? And, we do affirmations, right? In New Thought, we're all very fond of affirmations. And I think affirmations are very powerful. But for me, what I found is that it's not enough. Because I can talk it all day long, but if there's something underlying it, then it doesn't work. For me, I need an understanding. I need to get to the root of that belief. What is the belief that's stopping this? Am I the only one who's ever experienced self-sabotage? Anybody else? Right? We want to lose that weight. We want to accomplish a goal. We want to be more kind to the people we love, whatever it is. We set our intention, we start moving in that direction, and before we know it, we're right back where we started. And we don't understand it, and we try it again, and we try it again. And what we don't understand is that there's something underlying that. Several years ago, I was in Mary Kay, and I got into that because I never used to wear makeup, so I didn't like the sales part of it, but I was intrigued the first time I saw a sales director walk in the door. And have you ever seen somebody walk in the door and they're just like, wow, you get their attention. There's a presence about them. And I was so enamored with her. And at that time, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I wasn't feeling very enamored with myself. And I wanted whatever she had. And so I got into this company, and Mary Kay was really the first introduction I had to New Thought principles. Because Mary Kay Ash, she was really a genius, and she taught us, you believe it before you see it. Your attitude determines your altitude, right? We had all these cliches, fake it till you make it kind of thing. But that's all New Thought stuff. And sure enough, I made my way up. I became a sales director. I earned the use of a brand new red Grand Am car, which I was so excited about. And at that time, I had just had my third child. And it was it was such a, I felt so good about myself every time I saw that red car, right? And I kept moving. And then I had another child. And then something happened. I lost it all. And I watched that tow truck drive into my neighborhood, and I handed them my keys, and I watched them load that car and drive away. And my unit was relinquished back to the company. And the last bit of self-esteem that I had drove away with that car trailer. And I felt like an utter failure. And what I didn't understand at the time was there was something operating in me underneath all of those affirmations that wouldn't allow me to actually step into what I wanted, that wouldn't allow me to enjoy it, that wouldn't allow me to feel good about myself. And then I had another child. I'm a slow And it was only at that point, after the fifth child and 2 or 3 more years, that I hit the point of pain that was so strong and disassembled every aspect of my life, that then I was ready to start taking a look at my beliefs. What's underlying everything? And I have to tell you, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, it's not a real cushy, fun, sweet thing to do when we get to that point. Because what it requires is we have to get really honest with ourselves. And as Patricia will attest to, I was very invested in my story. It was just not my story, it was me. And I was attached to it. And I was attached to my victimhood. And I didn't want to think that it was me. It was always somebody out there. right? But when you get to the point when you start to notice, I seem to be the common denominator in everything. Everything that's not working, the people that come and go, the circumstances that come and go, the one thing that's always the same is me. Ugh. And that's when you start going internally. And that's when you have to start examining your beliefs. So in the biology of belief, he talks about, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And I know we talk about that a little bit, but I think it's really important to understand the difference. So the conscious mind is our free will. And in order to be operating from the place of free will, we have to be conscious. There's a reason it's named that. We have to be mindful. We have to be very present right here, right now. That's our conscious mind, and that's where our choices reside. Subconscious mind, it has no thinking. It has no reasoning, no logic. It has no judgment. It's merely a stimulus playback response. That's all it is. But it has immense power. Because I know you've all at some point heard the experiment of Pavlov's dog, right? They feed the dog, they ring the bell and they salivate, right? And pretty soon, you know how it goes, I'm getting all confused, but that's your subconscious mind. That's your subconscious mind. So here's something I learned about myself recently, and I've learned it on different levels, and this time, it sinks in, and you go, oh, wow, the power of that. So here's the belief as I understand it now. As a child in my home, one of the methods that was used was the silent treatment. Okay? Now, I know now that it was never intended to be a method. All it was that somebody in the house didn't know how to own their feelings. They didn't know how to express themselves. And so instead what they did is they got silent. And as a little girl, how that felt for me was that there must be something wrong with me. That this person has to withdraw their love. That's what the silent treatment was for me. And so I developed coping mechanisms, because that's what we do. We develop coping mechanisms, which usually comes to protect ourselves. And I learned to put up walls. It's that mindset of, well, I didn't want you to love me anyways, right? That's what the little girl in me is saying. I did something, or something happened, here's the silent treatment. Oh no. What did I do? There's something wrong with me. Well, I didn't want you to love me anyways. Right? And now here's the problem with the subconscious mind, is that we get stuck there. So that works for us really well in the moment. I'm sure that served me well, and it protected me. It protected my emotions as a small child. But then circumstances change. I'm not 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 anymore. I'm 45, and I'm still doing the same thing. So every person that comes in front of me to love me, as soon as there's a moment of silence, however that looks, they don't call for a while, whatever that looks like, I feel that there must be something wrong with me. I'm Pavlov's dog. It happens automatically. And then I say something mean because my mouth will push them away. And then I get to affirm for myself, see, you're not lovable. Well, I didn't want them to love me anyways. Right? Because what we don't understand is that if we don't know how these beliefs are operating, we're on autopilot. And when there's a stimulus in our environment or an emotion comes up, it triggers the subconscious and says, oh, here's that pattern. Here's what we do. Right? Here's the silence. This is how we handle that. And it becomes this thing I don't even think about anymore until you do. And only then can you kind of pull it apart and get the understanding. For me, it really helps to understand where it came from. Why did I develop that coping mechanism? And embrace that and say, thank you. Thank you because you served me well when I needed you to. But now, how about we try things a little differently? It doesn't seem to be working quite as well anymore. Because now what it does, what those patterns do that served us once, is now they completely create havoc in our life. Because we're adults, and we've learned other coping mechanisms. But until we stop the one that's automatically running all the time, it's hard to implement anything else. So how do we do that? I think first we have to get a little space, right? We have to engage our observer, as they say, and we have to start watching ourselves. And I will tell you, if you do this, you will find that you are so fascinating. I realize I am so fascinating. And my new phrase is, isn't that interesting? Because what you have to do when you observe yourself is you have to take all the judgment out of it. Because as soon as you judge yourself, you've closed the process down. And so I like, isn't that interesting? I say this all the time. Isn't that interesting? Look at what I'm doing. Isn't that interesting? Look at what I just said. I wonder why I did that, right? You have to develop this sense of curiosity about yourself. I wonder why I said that. And if you're willing to ask yourself those questions, I promise you answers will come. You just have to get curious. So one of the things he talks about what I want to say about those patterns that we develop is the fascinating thing that I found in my own experience is that my patterns often came out of things that other people didn't even tell me to believe, right? They were based on the assumptions that I made based on what I saw happening. It was all me. It was nobody else's fault. I created the patterns. And I'm the one with the power to disassemble the patterns. So that's very freeing, right? We don't have to wait for somebody else to change. We get to do it ourselves. He talks about in the book, he noticed this with cells, and then he talked about it as with us as humans, as in our wholeness, is that our body is either in growth or protection. And we cannot operate in both effectively at the same time. So your cells are either growing or they're in lockdown mode. Which if you notice in yourself, when you go into protection mode, what happens? I don't know about you, but for me, every door, it's like I can hear them slamming shut, and I'm locking all the bolts, right? That's what happens, and it's like suddenly I'm encased in armor, and nothing and no one can get through. But here's the kicker, I can't get out. It's a very painful place to be. And when we're in that mode, we can't grow. You know, when I was getting to the bottom of where I was, and I hit bottom a few times, just when you think you can't, I've hit bottom. Oh no, there's always another one. But I literally felt like I was dying. Like I had no life force left in me. Like I was this body walking around, and there was no pulse. And at the time, I attributed that to people in my life, right? Because that's what we do. We don't know any better. It's always something out there. But the more I study and the more I learn, it's this, right? I was in so much of a protection mode and had been for years and years and years that I was literally strangling my life force because I couldn't grow. Because when you're in protection, you can't grow. And just not being in protection isn't enough, because that's a neutral place. You have to actually pursue joy, love. You have to be open to it. That's where the growth springs from. Be mindful of the little negatives, right? Because we always think, what are the big things that's happening? What are the big beliefs that are happening? And that's true. Those are important. But usually, it's not the big fires that get us. It's the things that are slowly burning, right? Those little negatives. Start every now and then, ask yourself, what am I thinking? I know this can be a scary thought. What am I thinking, right? But I invite you to ask yourself that. Every now and then, just think, what am I thinking? And get really mindful of what's happening inside of you. Are you hearing things like, I knew that was going to happen. I can't afford that. That person always makes me feel bad. Pay attention to those little thoughts that you hear. I love to take baths and relax in a bathtub, and always have. But what I realized back in that really difficult period is that what I was doing is I was getting in the bathtub and literally soaking in negativity. Because I had these thought patterns that were looping. And the longer I stayed in the bathtub, the more they looped. So I wasn't really relaxing. I was in this vicious cycle. And Patricia was so patient with me because, I was so attached to that. And I didn't even know how much I was doing it. And when you start paying attention and get really conscious about what's going on in your mind, well, it may scare you. But it will free you, because once you know what you're doing, you can say, is that true? I started asking myself when I start to go down, and it's a cycle, right? And it can just tank you to the bottom very quickly. I know mine can. And it seems to be a one-way road, right? Once I get so far down the road, it seems like there's not a place to turn around until I hit bottom. So when I start to hear things in my mind, I think, is that true? Because I'm my worst enemy. And you're worthless. Right? There are all these things we sometimes say to ourselves. And I've started saying, is that true? If I had a friend standing in front of me, would she agree with that? Would he agree with that? No, I don't think I'm going to buy into that one today. Thank you for sharing. On next, what else can we come up with, right? It's a powerful process when you get yourself into it. So, what happens when we start getting mindful of our thought patterns and our beliefs? We tap into a spiritual power. And that's the place that we can start coming from love. Right? Because there's either fear or there's love. I believe that. If it's not love, then in some way, in some form, it's fear. So look at your beliefs. Are they love or are they fear? And kind of along the same line, I believe that everything is either an expression of love or a call for love. What are your beliefs saying? Are they expressing love? Or in some way are they saying, please love me?
That's powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, this is powerful work. This is powerful work. And here's the thing I've learned about beliefs is if it's a belief, then I have to believe it all the time, not just when it serves me or when it's easy. Right? And I've had these instances that made me understand the power of that. So when I was in high school, I didn't feel that close to my mom. But I had other women in my life, and as a teenager, I justified that and said, hey, as long as I'm getting what I need, does it matter who it comes from? And that felt right. That was my belief. Well, of course, then, what does the universe do? They give you something, right? And so my oldest daughter, becomes a teenager, and we're not as close as I had hoped we would, but she has other women in her life. Now, initially, was I saying, as long as she's getting what she needs? Not quite. I was hurt. right? I was hurt. And then something in me said, wait a minute. I thought you had this belief that it doesn't matter where they get it from as long as they get what they need. Do you really believe that? So remember that about your beliefs. Divine timing, right? It's really easy to say, oh, I believe in divine timing when everything's going your way. Right? It is. What about when you hit a little hiccup or it seems like things have just stopped? Do you hear yourself saying, that's okay, I believe in divine timing? Right? It's a little harder. But if it's a belief, you believe it all the time, no matter what. So use that filter when you look at some of your beliefs and think, do I want to believe this all the time? Because if I believe it for me, I believe it for you. It's something to think about. So, look at your life. Is it full of what you'd like it to be? Is it going where you'd like it to be going? You know, we are co-creating our lives with Spirit. It's this beautiful, magnificent, divine partnership. And if you're not headed quite in the direction you'd like to be, I have good news. You are in control of your destiny. You and Spirit. You walk side by side. So if you're not going where you want it to be going, I'm thinking maybe you have a belief somewhere in you that's creating resistance and holding you back and not allowing you to move in the direction that you'd like to be moving. And I promise you, because I've experienced it for myself, when you go back through and you find the root of that belief, and you have the courage to think a different thought, your life will change. Hands down, no exceptions. Should we take this into meditation? So I invite you to just get comfortable in your chair. Let's engage our conscious minds for a moment. Feel the chair underneath of you. What is the sensation of that? Do you feel a person next to you? Do you feel energy? And then go inside. What are you feeling internally? Are you feeling a little resistance? Things you've heard today? Is there maybe some belief that you haven't been aware of that maybe is making its way to the surface? Sometimes our beliefs will scream at us, and sometimes they're just a whisper. And it's in the moments that we are able to get really, truly quiet that we can hear what's whispering inside of us. What needs attention? What's calling for love? What part of you wants to be embraced and noticed? And when we listen, then we can heal all those parts of us so that we can truly just be a vessel for love. It's always a choice, a moment-by-moment choice. Fear or love. Fear or love. Just take that inside of you and sit with that. to choose. You have the power to create your beliefs. You have the power to take yourself where you want to go, to create the life you want to have, to be the person that you want to be, that you came here to be, that you already are and maybe you've just forgotten. And so we remember as we go about the rest of our day, we have the choice to believe what serves us. And in that choice, we find love. We are love. We are love. We are love, and so it is. My blessing for you this week is to embrace the power of belief. Belief in yourself, believe in love.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bless you.